thank you for having me today, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to try to share the screen, and here we are. So I was tasked with trying to cover the issue of settler terrorism in the West Bank. There's obviously enormous amount of angles that we can get into this. We see in the recent years, settler attacks are more frequent, are more lethal, more serious, much more organized. Yeah, there are many things that we can talk about this. And obviously, when we talk about settler violence and terrorism in the West Bank, it's not just about the settlers who are carrying the attacks. It's about an entire Israeli establishment, government bodies, military police, etc., doing nothing to enforce law on them. But what I want to focus in today's conversation is try to explain one of the most important features for why the number of settler attacks has grown so dramatically in the past few years, plus to talk about the implications post-October 7 in terms of displacement of Palestinian communities and why the settler attacks have been so successful from their eyes in displacing Palestinian communities post-October 7. Okay, so this is a specific niche, but we're going to dive deep into that one. So when we try to talk and think about historically where settler violence and terrorism was concentrated in the West Bank 20, 30, 40 years ago, the answer would have been basically four main locations. And that's what you see those circles on the map of the West Bank. It has been the settlements around Nablus, the area of Shiloh in the north, and the settlements inside the old city of Hebron and around the South Hebron Hills. And the reason why these areas were where we had settler violence historically is because these are areas where the settlements have not been suburbanized. So the rule of thumb basically in the West Bank is as further away you get from Jerusalem to the north and the south, settlers will become more hardcore, more ideological. And as you go deeper and deeper, right, these are people that actually need to take an effort to come in and out from the settlement as opposed to a suburb of Jerusalem or the coastal plain. And with these kind of group of people comes also the violence. And that's why 15 years ago or so, settler violence would be mainly concentrated in these four locations. What changes really is the move of the settlers towards what they call the battle over Area C. Yeah, the 60% of the West Bank that under the Oslo Accords is under complete control of Israel. The idea was basically to push Palestinian communities off the land of Area C into Area A and B. So if I go back to the map, the blue and white areas you see on the map, that's Area C. The brown areas are Area A and B. The idea is to push Palestinian communities from Area C into Area B. And at the beginning, this is a campaign that is led by the state. And you can see the slow but consistent growth of the militias, state-led demolitions of Palestinian structures, because part of how we try to take over Area C is we don't approve building permits, we don't recognize Palestinian communities, we don't give infrastructure, etc. And you can see that steady growth. But it didn't work in terms of displacing entire Palestinian communities. The turning point was Trump 1. And this is an interesting graph to see data when we try to understand whether US policy actually has an impact on the ground. You can see on the number of outposts. Bush first, Bush basically, this is W. Bush, yeah, but his second term, once the roadmap is introduced and the pressure against growth of settlements starts, you can see 48 outposts during the second Intifada goes down to 3. And under Obama, 7, 14, there's the settlement freeze, there's all the friction. The second Trump takes power, over 40 outposts. And the bear hug of Biden, we can see, is even worse. So a massive growth of outposts from Trump 1 starts. And that will later on, as we're going to see now, is going to lead for the massive growth of settler violence. Because there are two kinds of outposts. There's the old outposts, like this one here, like away. Settlers take over a hilltop. It's unauthorized under Israeli law by Israeli authorities, but still, the Israeli government is financing, IDF is protecting, budgets come, infrastructure, etc. But the aspiration is ultimately to be a settlement, to properly grow and become a village, as you can see. While there is a second kind of outpost, which is herding outpost, which is a very, very different concept. It's one family, 10, 15 kids, students, kind of like youth. Some of them dropped out of the system, were sent to be rehabilitated, so to speak, in this herding farm. Very few people take massive amount of land, right? The torch for the battle over Area C is moved from the state to the settlers, yeah? And it's settler violence that will start to spread and lead. And you can see how strategically this is placed and located. Look at the enclave of Area B of Beit Fawik and Beit Dajan here in the center of the map, which is near east of Nablus. You can see the settlements, the original settlements in blue, El Morei, Tamar, Hamra, Mechora, which are fragmenting the space. But then look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 herding outposts around. And in red, these red lines are areas where Palestinians, as of 4 years ago, could not access anymore because of settler violence from these herding farms. So you can see this is about originally taking over Area C, squeezing Palestinian farmers and shepherds into the enclaves. Look at the growth of settler violence, of settler attacks, UN numbers. With the growth of number of outposts, we have also growth in numbers way before October 7, 2022, one attack per day on average, 2021, one attack per day, 2022, a little bit over 2 attacks per day, 2023 up to October 7, around 3 attacks, after October 7, up to 7, average of 7 attacks per day, and then it goes down, stabilizes to where it is today, about 4 attacks per day. And one of the main reasons is the spread of outposts, because 15 years ago, we had 4 frontiers, so to speak. Only from October 7, we have more than 100 outposts. And pay attention to this phenomenon, 11 of them, 10 of them are in Area B, 1 in Area A, which is another issue which we're not going to get into today. So just numerically, we now have hundreds of fronts, as opposed to 4 fronts where settlers would attack and go around, because now they are the leading force for the battle over Area C, leading into the battle over open spaces. And you can see post-October 7, if from January 2022 to September 2023, only 4 Palestinian communities have been displaced because of settler violence. Post-October 7, we're talking about 85 Palestinian communities and encampments that have been displaced due to settler violence from herding farms. Okay, so the majority of attacks of settlers today come from herding farms. And that is the driving force for the displacement of Palestinian farming and herding communities throughout the West Bank. You can see that today we're talking about more than 8,000 dunams, so that's 14% of the West Bank, you can see it in red here, that is now inaccessible to Palestinians due to violence from these herding farms. So very successful land grab strategy that is being coordinated and organized by the state and the settlers. Now, why October 7 is so much of a turning point for the displacement of communities, It's not only the numbers, it's also the qualitative changes post-October 7. And that leads me to the last thing I want to talk, which is very important to keep in mind and understand. There is for decades a discussion of why do we see the lack of law enforcement and settlers in the West Bank? And there are many, many reasons. First and foremost, because of soldiers who are placed in the West Bank. Our orders are not to intervene. Our orders are to guard the settlers, not to protect Palestinians. Because the settlers are on our side, Palestinians are the enemy in terms of the way the army works. Because the settlers host you on Friday night for schnitzel and, Saturday afternoon for chunt, and what, you're going to arrest them on Sunday morning when they beat up a Palestinian? No way. Yeah, there are all these reasons. But it's also because the relationship, the structural relationship between the military and the settlers is so symbiotic. Sometimes it's not any clear where starts the civilian, ends the civilian, starts the military, ends the military. And after October 7, we got kind of like a broad view into how this works on the most extreme version of it, which is what is called the regional defense battalions. What are they and how it works? The way the IDF is structured is that in a full-scale war, the better trained, better equipped units, which are the conscript units, are sent to the front lines. So in our case, after October 7, it was Gaza and Lebanon. So who are the soldiers deployed in the West Bank? Usually reservists. Some of them are normal and regular reserved units of the IDF, but some of them are special reserve units that are called regional defense battalions. So the West Bank is divided to about 7 regional brigades in the IDF. The area of Hebron, for example, is the Judea Regional Brigade. The area of Bethlehem, it's the Etzion Regional Brigade. The area of Ramallah is the Binyamin Regional Brigade, and so on and so forth. And each of these brigades has regional defense battalions that are mainly made of local settlers. So you basically have a reality where the same settlers on the hilltop and the outpost nearby, if you're a Palestinian farmer or shepherd living in the community in Area C, the guys that for 2, 3, 4 years have been beating you up, trying to chase you off your land as civilians, October 7 happens. October 8 in the morning, they're in uniform with guns, and they are the military commanders of the area. So this is not anymore even a pretense of a buffer between the violent settlers and the military. And again, it's not anymore a story about soldiers standing idly by while Palestinians are being attacked by settlers. It's not anymore a case of few soldiers joining the settlers and attacking Palestinians. At that minute, at that point in time, the settlers are the military, the IDF, and the IDF is the settlers. So when these guys come in the middle of the night to your house, put a gun to your head, put you on the floor, and tell you have 24 hours to leave or we're going to come and shoot you, you leave. Yeah? Not always, not everybody, but many. And I'll just end with this, of an example of few guys there. Some of them are well known to Eid, with Eid, your personal encounters with some of them. But I just wanted to give you an example. Yeah, Gabriel Kalish was a settler security coordinator in an outpost that was retracted approved near Jericho, very, very violent towards the nearby Palestinian communities. El Yashiv, who has a herding farm in the South Hebron Hills. You can see here, full military uniform and gear. Betzalel Talia has an outpost in the South Hebron Hills. Yeah, Nof Neshel, the Lucifer farm. And Yitzhak Peled, this is a settler that was convicted in Israeli courts for assault. That means he's above average, yeah, because settlers enjoy complete impunity, and it's very rare to have settlers being convicted. But as you can see, full military gear, by the way, US manufactured gun, yeah, and now they are the law. They control. And suddenly Palestinians, there is no pretense that there is anything to serve as a buffer and to shield them from this violence. So again, just to sum it up, I really think one of the most important things, there are different things that influence, but one of the most important things is the move of the settlers for kind of like the battle over Area C and open spaces, and the inflation of herding outposts. yeah, over 120, 140 of them by now, opening so many frontiers, plus the regional defense battalions post October 7 are responsible to the devastating impact. Yeah, 14% of the West Bank today and growing every day. Yeah, because on a weekly basis, more outposts are being built with complete support and backing of the government. Yeah, anyway, I think I've said enough about this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yehuda. That was a very comprehensive overview. I think if I could stay with you for a minute or less, I wanted a clarification question from the Q&A from Sheridan, asking for you to quickly break down the differences between areas A, B, and C. And knowing today that we're going to spend most of our time talking about area C, where Eid is living.
So that's a result of the Oslo Accords, Oslo B in 1995, where the West Bank was divided to three, and you can see here on the map, the kind of like the darkest brown is the built-up areas, but this brown is Area A. So basically, the major Palestinian towns and big cities became Area A, 18%, about 18% of the West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority manages civilian affairs and internal security. Then you have the lighter brown, which you see here, for example, or here, which is Area B. That's kind of like smaller suburbs, some villages in the outskirts, yeah? Around 22% of the West Bank, which the Palestinian Authority manages civilian affairs, but not internal security. So anything to do with security is fully IDF managed and controlled. And then you have Area C, the remaining 60%, which is the blue and white areas, which are basically the settlements, the roads connecting them, and the open spaces, majority of the open spaces, which are complete control of Israel. This is where you have about 500,000 settlers and about 300,000 Palestinians living there.